So we have some important news on the current efforts to remove suppressors and short-barreled rifles from the NFA nationwide. So let's break down what is happening. Now, real quick, if you're watching this channel, then obviously it's safe to say that you care about the Second Amendment and your rights. Now, here's the thing, even law-abiding gun owners are ending up in jail because they make a bunch of critical mistakes. And those are mistakes that you don't even realize that you're making or that you don't understand that they're illegal. So I put together a free resource called the Legal Survival Guide. It's aimed to help you guys avoid all of those traps that maybe you could fall in. It takes about 2 minutes to read. It's just a simple PDF. And it really could save you years behind bars. I made it to help you guys, again, completely free to download using the link down below. It's just something that I wanted to provide you guys for free so that you can have it in your phone or maybe print it out. And there's a little card also in there that you can put in your wallet to give you additional resources to help you in situations. Obviously, not meant to be legal advice. I'm not your attorney. This isn't an attorney-client relationship, but I wanted to provide you guys some free resources to prevent you falling in some bad situations. Again, if you're interested, click the links down below. It's completely free to do. All you have to do is enter your email to get that free PDF. Now, before we jump into this video, I want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is Attorneys on Retainer. When it comes to protecting yourself after a self-defense incident, AOR is in a league of their own. AOR is a real law firm, so they can help you in self-defense situations. And if you get yourself in an incident, they can help you in one of those situations that maybe other companies would not. For example, AOR recently got a big win for one of their members in the state of New York, where a lot of companies cannot actually operate. So if you're interested in AOR, you can check them out using my link down below. And if you sign up using my code ARMSCHOLAR, you can get $50 off of your individual sign-up plan and then also $25 off of a family plan if you want a family plan. So in this video, we need to talk about what is currently happening right now in response to the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act and the NFA tax changes that happened and were passed through H.R. 1, the Big Beautiful Bill. Now, if you've been following the channel for a while, you know that recently H.R. 1 passed. And in that was the reduction of the NFA tax. It took it from $200 to $0. So that is the NFA tax change that we got in HR 1. In my eyes, that was a half measure. And of course, I, like others, would have liked the full repeal of the NFA's restrictions, including the registration. But unfortunately, rhinos in Congress were unwilling to press that issue to get the full version of the HPA and the Short Act that we wanted. And then also they were unwilling to remove the Senate parliamentarian who was responsible for striking out the full versions of the language that we wanted, and she put up that roadblock so that we could not get the full version. One of the things that we were all concerned about coming out of that NFA tax change from $200 to $0 was that maybe Democrats would try to use that same playbook to increase the NFA tax, and we just saw that happen. A bill was recently submitted to essentially do exactly what we were concerned about. Senator Chris Murphy introduced a proposed amendment to the military spending bill, which would increase the NFA tax requirement from the $200 tax, and now they're trying to get that in place before it goes to $0 next year, and they want to take the NFA tax all the way up to $4,709 per tax stamp. So the Democrats are taking action in response to that NFA tax change that happened in HR 1, but now multiple toy organizations are also launching challenges with the goal of actually removing suppressors and SBRs from the NFA outright. GOA, FRAC, Palmetto State Armory, Silencer Co. have now filed a lawsuit against the ATF. There have been also other lawsuits that have been filed by FPC and SAF, and they're going against states, and they're trying to remove state bans on suppressors and SBR. So they're kind of taking a state level, response to the NFA tax issue, and then you have GOA and FRAC that are kind of going against the NFA at large and trying to remove the registry. Now, in the lawsuit filed by GOA and the other groups, they argue that enacted in 1935, the NFA is premised on Congress's taxing powers. The act imposed a $200 tax stamp, approximately $5,000 in today's dollars, on the manufacture and transfer of particular classes of firearms. Now, it's interesting because, the note, there that it's about $5,000 in today's, dollars based on inflation. That is kind of exactly what Chris Murphy recently did with his proposed increase of the tax. He wants to take it to $4,709. GOA goes on to argue in their lawsuit that the NFA's authors left no doubt that the NFA was an exercise of the taxing power, and the Supreme Court upheld it on that basis. This has been the uncontroversial understanding of courts and commenters for nearly a century. They state that, but the NFA no longer imposes any tax on the vast majority of firearms it purports to regulate. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which Congress passed and the President enacted on July 4th, 2025, zeroes the manufacture and transfer tax on nearly all NFA regulated firearms. That means that the constitutional foundation on which the NFA rested was dissolved, and the NFA cannot be upheld under any other Article 1 power. With respect to the untaxed firearms, the act is now unconstitutional. Now, here I want to note that this lawsuit is based specifically on the changes of the tax requirement from $200 to $0, but with this proposed bill, essentially with the increase of the tax, it would also undermine this type of lawsuit. Now, the first count brought in this complaint against the ATF is for declaratory judgment that the NFA's registration and transfer requirements now exceeds Congress's Article 1 enumerated powers with respect to the untaxed firearms. So now that they are untaxed firearms, that there's a $0 tax, which is essentially no tax, they argue that that undermines the basis for this type of law. And, there is no constitutional basis for the NFA because, it does not actually align with Congress's Article 1 powers. They state that the NFA's registration, manufacture, and transfer requirements pertaining to untaxed firearms exceeds Congress's enumerated powers. These requirements were enacted and sustained as an exercise of Congress's taxing powers. Silencers, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and the NFA's any other weapons categories are now untaxed, yet the registration and transfer requirements persist. Plaintiffs are injured by the NFA's unconstitutional requirements. Plaintiffs are entitled to a declaration that the NFA's registration and transfer requirements exceed Congress's enumerated powers. Now, the second count that they asked for as far as relief, they asked for injunctive relief against federal officers, federal officials, law enforcement, and essentially enjoining them from enforcing the NFA against all of these now untaxed firearms. In summary, what GOA and the other companies are asking for in this challenge is for the court to declare that the NFA's registration and transfer requirements pertaining to now all of these untaxed firearms, suppressors, SBRs, SBSs, that it exceeded Congress's enumerated powers. They also asked for the court to enjoin all the ATF's employees, officers, and agents from implementing the NFA against all of those now untaxed firearms. So that is what this lawsuit aims to do in response to that now, new NFA tax change, which is set to take place, I believe, at the beginning of January. They have filed this lawsuit in the Northern District of Texas in a federal court, and the 2A causes have kind of good decisions come out of the federal courts there in the Northern District of Texas. We've had cases like the Vanderstock 80%er case, the mock pistol brace case, the FRT challenges. All of those came out of the Northern District of Texas, so that's why they filed this there as well. The judge assigned to this specific case is Judge Hendricks, and we don't have a lot of 2A decisions out of him. I don't believe he's addressed any specifically out of the Northern District of Texas. He hasn't addressed any of these big cases that we're talking about, like the 80%er cases or pistol braces, but he has issued some decisions that, of course, the left has hated. However, I will note, in my opinion, regardless of what happens in this lawsuit, there will no doubt be challenges and appeals where this gets elevated to the Fifth Circuit. And the possibility of a nationwide injunction is kind of off the table now because of what the Supreme Court recently said in one of their rulings. So whatever relief we get in this challenge will likely be limited to just the organizations and their members, and then also probably the companies and their customers. But even with that type of relief, there's a likelihood that the Fifth Circuit will stay those decisions when they decide to review them on appeal. That's just my opinion, but that's based on what we've seen happen before. They're probably not going to want to disrupt the status quo of the NFA and the whole registration process. One caveat to all of this that I need to note is that we don't know yet what the Trump ATF will actually do in response to this challenge. Based on how they've responded to some of these cases in the past, they may say that the registry is still lawful, but maybe you cannot outright ban, these type of items like certain states do, like New York and California. So we're going to wait to see what the Trump DOJ says in response to this, and maybe how the 2A task force actually decides they want to respond to this new NFA tax challenge, to the registration challenge in response to what happened in the Big Beautiful Bill. So there's a lot of moving parts right now in this NFA battle. Lawsuits have been launched, and now Democrats are launching bills to try to increase the NFA tax and kind of try to use a similar component, a similar mechanism to increase the tax all the way up from $200 to $4,709. As we get more information, as this unravels more, I will let you guys know. But if you guys like this video and you would like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to simply subscribe to the channel. Also, you can check out my website. Over there, we have a legal guide. You can get the legal guide. I will link that down below where you can sign up. All you have to do is put in your email. You get the free PDF, and then also we'll send you some emails with some follow-up educational information so you guys can kind of stay up to date with some of the things that are changing and some things that are going on. But as always, thank you guys so much for all of your support. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.